Hello, my dear wonderful friends. Good afternoon. And once again, we are welcome to our CRS lessons for our SHS syllabus. We are going to start to look at one of the selected epistles. We have already looked at the epistle of James, and we are looking today at the epistle of First Peter. There are three topics in this book. We are going to look at Christians living among non-Christians. We're going to look at Christians living among Christians, and then also at good citizenship. We're going to start today by looking at Christians living among non-Christians. Our passage for this lesson will be 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1 to verse 25. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1 to verse 25. And as I always do, I would implore you to read the passage at least 3 times. I keep on saying that this is the primary document, primary point of reference for this lesson. So let's see what Peter taught on how Christians ought to live among non-Christians, among people of other faiths and people even who do not believe in any God at all. What did Peter teach? Now, Peter advises that Christians should avoid or resist every kind of evil, every guile, insincerity, and slander. As Christians, we should not be found indulging ourselves in these practices because we have tasted of the kindness of God. And so we are admonished by Peter to be like newborn babies who long for milk for nourishment. Christians should have in mind that they are newborn babies who must grow, and in growing, we must desist from evil, from guile, from insincerity, from slander, and sins of that nature. We are to live our life like living stones so that we can be used by God in building God's own spiritual temple. In other words, Christians should become useful to God by the way they live their lives because they are different. They are a chosen people, they are a royal priesthood, and they are a holy nation for God. So as we live our lives among other people, we should know that we are very different. We are very peculiar. We are a royal priesthood. As far as the Jews were concerned, the only a selected tribe, the tribe of Judah, was selected to be kings, to be royals. Only the Levites were selected to be priests. And we as Christians are these two in one, which makes us very special in the community of people of other faiths. We should know that we are a holy nation unto God, just as the Israelites were unto God. Our task, according to Peter, as Christians, is to proclaim God's wonderful deeds to this world. And so that is what we are called to do. He goes on to say, in outlining how peculiar we are, that as aliens of this world, we are to abstain from passions of the flesh that wage war against the soul. We have the passions of the flesh, but these passions of the flesh wage war against the soul, and Christians are to abstain from these ones. Among the Gentiles, whom the early Christians lived, to whom Peter wrote this letter, Peter advised them to have good conduct among the Gentiles, so that they may see the good works of these Christians and give glory to God. And as he has said, our duty is to give glory to God. And so he says that we should live good lives among the Gentiles so they see our good works and give glory to our Father in heaven. Now he goes on to address another aspect of our lives as we live in communion with all people of various kinds. And so he addresses how we should relate to civil authority. So he says that we should be subject to all human institutions. Every human institutions, the government, the civil authority, police authority, military, Peter says, be subject to all human institutions because it will silence the ignorance of foolish men. There are some men who think that Christians are against civil authority. And in fact, it was the case at the time that Peter was writing. And so Peter said, as we are Christians, we should be subject to all human institutions in order to silence the ignorance of foolish men. That although we are free as Christians, he advises that we should not use our freedom for evil. And so he goes on to say that we should honor all men, including the emperor, including all in charge of civil authority, love the brotherhood, and fear God. In all that we do, Peter says, love the brotherhood, those amongst your own faith, love them, and most importantly, fear God. Now, Peter comes to domestic authority, slaves and their masters, and he says Christian slaves are to be submissive to their masters regardless of who they are, regardless of their disposition, whether they are gentle or they are overbearing. Peter says, be subject to every domestic authority, to your masters, be subject to them. He advised the Christian to endure pain in suffering for doing good. Of course, some of their masters were quite wicked and inflicting pain upon them. But Peter said, if you are doing right and you are suffering for it, be happy, endure that pain. Learn from Jesus, who was abused but did not retaliate. We should learn from Jesus, who was abused, but Jesus did not retaliate. So in sum, this is all that Peter taught the early Christians on how they should live with people of other faiths as they find themselves in the community of people. Now, what can we learn from what Peter teaches? Number one, we learn that we must live pure and exemplary lives. Of course, that is very clear and obvious. Our lives must be pure, and our lives must be worthy of emulation. We must live above reproach as Christians. We should also be submissive to authorities, be they civil, domestic, or whatever kind of authority. As much as it does not conflict with our faith, we must be subject to those authorities. Then we should know that we have a special place and not be conformed to the ways of this world. Now he says we are different. We are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people. Therefore, we can't be like everyone else in the world. We have to know our special place and behave and conduct ourselves as such. Then we ought to glorify God in everything we do. In everything, in every life we live, Peter says we ought to be able to glorify God with our actions and with all the things that we do. Let us summarize all that we have learned today. So as always, we ask, what have we learned? One important thing we should notice is this. The book of Peter is quite hard to recall and to write an exam on because it is not a story. It's also a narrative as we see in the other topics in the Gospels and in the Old Testament. This basically borders on matters of doctrine and teaching, and it's quite hard to recollect, I must concede. And so there is this diagram I've brought up to help us capture and remember what Peter taught. Now, we can break Peter's teaching into three themes or three thematic areas. Now, these are his teachings on general conduct, how the Christian should behave generally, how the Christians should relate to civil authority, and how the Christians should relate to domestic authority as well. So, as far as general conduct is concerned, we can divide it into two. Peter says, be sincere, let there be no evil among you, resist all kind of slander. So remember that we learned about general conduct of the Christian, that he should be sincere, resist evil, resist slander. Then he goes on to tell us that we are a peculiar people. We are a holy nation, that we are a royal priesthood, that we are aliens in this world. And therefore, our lives must reflect the fact that we are aliens in this world, and our lives must be different. Then in civil authority, he goes on to tell the early Christians that submit to every human institutions. Do so in order to silence the ignorance of foolish men. Fear God, honor the emperor, love the brotherhood. And it goes on to tell them about domestic authorities, those that they live with, their masters, that submit to your masters, whether they are gentle or whether they are overbearing. Endure pain, because Jesus Christ, your master, was able to endure pain and did not retaliate. And so when we have this diagram and we study it carefully, it will become very useful for us when we are trying to recall what Peter taught as far as living among non-Christians is concerned. All right, my dear friends, this is where we bring the curtains down on our lesson on Peter's teachings on how Christians ought to live among people of other faiths, among non-Christians. I believe this has been very useful to you. I would encourage you to watch as many times as you can so that you can remember. Please try to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share with others, and let's all learn and be better at everything that we do. Thank you for watching. And as always, be good, do good, and do have a nice day. Thank you.